eyes boring into mine, even though I knew I could easily get an eye full of pussy. I inwardly sighed in relief that she was letting the sketching go, and nodded, kicking my legs out before me and resting back on my palms.
"That's really cheesy and sweet,"
she replied through a large grin, inching closer to me and curling into my side. I smirked as I lay back, granting her access to the crook of my shoulder, and kissing the top of her annoyingly hair-sprayed head. "I'm a cheesy and sweet motherfucker, what can I say?" I joked, rubbing my hand up and down her spine, tickling her with my grazes over her skin. Reclined on our back, we couldn't help but look up at the sky, and it was just cloudy. It wasn't one of those perfect days, like I tried really fucking hard to plan for. It was just a light gray, misty above the treetops, and kind of cold. I spread my arms out and grabbed 2 handfuls of the blanket, folding it over us in a comfortable cocoon, as we lay peacefully. Maybe this day wasn't a complete bust. Her hand glided along my stomach and chest, her fingertips tracing the edges and outlines of my scars. As she breathed evenly against me, her hand wandered, lowering down to the spot where I should have had one of those sexy happy trails had that patch of flesh not been scarred by flame all those years ago. And then her hand kept going, and I closed my eyes as she caressed my dick, one fingertip gliding from my tip to my base and back up. She lifted her head, and I didn't even need to open my eyes to find her lips with mine. They were like magnets, drawing us together, and moving my body down a bit so that I could reach them more comfortably. And then we were making out again, but this time was better and slower, and definitely not the picture of fuck up like it had been only moments before. I turned on my side, and she hooked her leg over my hip, stroking my tongue with hers languidly, and pushing herself closer. Her hand moved from my dick, only to go to my hip, where she grabbed it and yanked me closer. My dick was then nestled in wet, slippery heat, and I furrowed my brow, threading my fingers through her hair, and angling my head to deepen our kiss. My breaths turned all fucking erratic and eager as I slid against her and groaned into her mouth. I pulled away, licking my lips, and still tasting the faint trace of strawberry from her lip gloss as I moved my hips and stared into her hooded eyes. She sank her teeth into her lip, and pressed hard against me, seeking more friction. I could always tell when she was getting really into it, because she always got super focused, and all fucking breathy. A lot like she was doing now. On my dick. So fucking beautiful, I breathed, moving my hand to her ass, and crushing her against me. I love seeing her like this, above all else. Call me a hormonal motherfucker, I didn't give a shit. When her lips parted and dried with her gasps and created these little crevices, and when her feet hooked over my calves to draw me closer, and when I could see the skin on her neck vibrate to the tempo of her pulse, she was fucking beautiful in this way that only I would ever see. She puffed and moaned, touching her forehead to mine as we moved fluidly despite our awkward positions. Her eyes looked down between us, the muscles in my stomach crippling and contracting as I moved. She stared at my body, murmuring,
"You too."
Her hands grasped my back, and I could feel the crescents her fingernails would make in my skin. Her hair fell over her shoulder, and left it bare, exposing her neck and collarbone to me. I reached down and licked it, as we rocked, pushing her down and pulling her up minutely with every motion. My eyes closed and I just enjoyed the sensations of her slick warmth gliding over me as she panted into my skin, her leg already beginning to quake around my hip. I went faster to accommodate her finicky, fleeting orgasm bullshit. I'd learned by now how annoyingly delicate that moment was. My dick glided with the motions of our hips, sliding along rather happily until there was one brief little slip. And then things kind of fucking lined up. I froze, the tip of my cock halting at just the right spot for this to go far beyond the act of wet humping. Her body was warm and still against me as we breathed against each other, her face in the crook of my neck and my nose in her hair. Sensing our dilemma, she leaned back to meet my gaze, resting her cheek on the blue blanket beneath us. It was just right fucking there. It was hot and wet, and practically smiling at my dick, and flashing a sign that said, "Hey, you. Come in here, and have a shitload of fun, yes?" Breathless and uncertain, I swallowed heavily, tightening my firm grip on her ass cheek, and consequently only spreading her wider for me. Oops. Her chest heaved, crushing her tits to my chest with every huff, and she looked at me, flushed.
Yeah.
She suddenly broke the silence with a breath, her eyebrows furrowing upward, and creating this little divot in her forehead. Her hand, still clinging to my back, tightened, and it pushed me closer. She was horny, and utterly fucking perfect. "K," was my whispered response, and I granted her 1 second to back out, because I was considerate, but goddamn it, I was horny too. She licked her lips in anticipation, and I could see her bracing herself, eyes wide and eager as her leg tightened around me, the heel of her foot pushing into my thigh. We didn't need anything else. All the preparation was dumb and stupid, and this was supposed to be natural, like breathing. But with more thrusting and a really fucking messy climax. I didn't even realize I was holding my breath as I spread her wider, and began a gentle push of my hips. My eyes were trained on her face, my ears on her breathing, all of the shit that, by now, was just involuntary. I drew in the sanctity of the safe word, like an asshole. We'd retired it, along with the use of the unicorn euphemism, and had just agreed that a simple fucking, ow, stop, would suffice. Still, I was perfectly in tune with her every reaction, whether I wanted to be or not. So I was holding my breath, and I only realized it when I was suddenly reminded of how ridiculously tight she was. I made this weird, gurgly choking sound as I eased myself forward and up, her eyelids drooping as her lips parted with a gusty sigh. Her fingernails dug deeper into my skin, and I might have been worried about it if she hadn't been breathing in these little gasps laced with a mewling sound upon each exhale. I'd never had sex without a condom before, and every feeling was amplified, tickling, pulsating as I eased further into her. In a strained voice, I asked, "Does it?" She only nodded, pressing me closer and urging me forward without words, and if she'd wanted me to stop halfway inside of her, I would have been perfectly happy with the limitation. Half a pussy is better than none, any day. Resting my lips against hers, I stared into her eyes, blurry and crossing as I pushed deeper. Trembling with the restraint necessary to go shallow and slow, and I knew was entirely confident that there would be a day when I could pound this shit lovingly if we could only manage this one moment, without fucking it up. Impatient, I pulled away slightly, the tightness of her squeezing me in fucking glorious ways. And then I thrust gently forward, and was unable to suppress the broken, strangled groan that escaped my lips upon finally feeling the sensation of that first, full thrust. I turned my face a bit and stared over her shoulder, dropping my eyelids as I concentrated on that feeling, hot and burning, and tightening the pit of my stomach with the urge to do it over and over and over and faster, and harder, and deeper, and thank fuck I jacked that shit before we left the house, because I'd totally be exploding by now. She inhaled deeply, her jaw hanging slightly ajar as her breath chilled my cheek, and she pushed me closer, deeper, tighter. I could feel a quiver in her inner thigh, and the slight, unconscious rocking of her hips. Her brows pulled tightly together, and she asked against my cheek in a thick voice,
"All right."
"Shit, it's just so fucking Christ," I attempted, curling my lips around the words, and trapping one between my teeth as I repeated the motion, pulling back, and pushing forward.
"God,"
she moaned, the sound vibrating against my skin, as my hips halted, and pulled back once more, and to a casual observer, I swear that we'd sounded religious, or some shit. It couldn't be sold in a porno, but my girl and I were officially having intercourse. Drunk off the lust and sensations of her surrounding me so tightly, I turned my face, and captured her parted lips. They were dry and cold, but her tongue was wet and hot, and it amplified the feelings of my slow thrusts, below. Our kissing, all fucking distracted and sloppy, was stop and go. I'd pull out and push in, and we'd forget to move our mouths, abruptly remembering, and quickly shifting our tongues and lips at the same time. She remained perfectly still, letting my hips do all the work. And then suddenly, she began to stiffly roll onto her back, and I didn't even freeze or falter, because I was beginning to realize that there was a certain flow to this shit, and the more I interrupted it, the less likely we were to follow through without incident. Without hesitation, I rolled with her, settling on top of her and flattening my palms against the blanket to lift the weight of my chest from her. Her legs spread, and I fit perfectly between them, staring down at her pink face and resuming the motions of my hips without any disruption. Her chest lifted and fell, the peaks of her nipples hard and taut, and pointing toward me as I was able to push deeper, the freedom of the position allowing our hips to finally meet. Her breath deepened once more and her eyes, glassy, shone as she weaved her fingers through my hair. And then, without warning, her still body came to life and she lifted her hips and writhed against me, meeting my hips and creating the friction she likely desired. I hissed through clenched teeth because it felt tighter and closer, and if that one little hip movement were a picture, I'd motherfucking frame that shit. She froze and looked up at me, alarmed, as if she didn't realize what she'd been doing.
Is it? Did I?
She worried, suddenly uncertain. I could feel the tightening of her legs and see the stiffening of her shoulders, and I hurried to reassure her. Cupping her ass, I lifted her to me and encouraged, "Good up there, see?" And then she ground against my pelvis with more confidence, the sweetest little moan escaping her lips, as her brows hunched downward, and she lifted higher. Removing my hand from her, I braced myself against the ground once again, and set a slow pace, rotating my hips lower, and emerging almost completely from her slick warmth with a groan. Her hips matched mine, and soon, we had set a synchronized rhythm of pushes and pulls and rotations and grinds. I'd never fucked like this before. The girl had always been on top, bouncing above me as I'd just pulled her onto me greedily. This was so much different and so much better. Her soft body beneath me was inviting, welcoming, and we were grounded as I softly slid myself into her over and over. Then again, this wasn't fucking at all. Her neck stretched upward as our tempo increased and I could discern the tightening of the cords in her neck as she gasped for breath, staring absently at the sky through hooded lids. I surrounded her chin with my mouth and fisted the fabric of the blankets in my palms, the grass below tearing from the soil beneath it as my breaths escaped my nose in brief and sharp hisses. Her moans soon transformed into breathless mewls, and her intense, almost fucking pleading stare as our rocks turned more and more succinct and exact, eventually penetrated my own. My arms began shaking as my knees dug into the soft ground, and my thrusts turned more and more erratic. I kissed her, and she pressed higher, and I whimpered against her lips, pressing clumsy kisses wherever I could reach, and clenching my eyes shut.
Don't. Almost.
She choked, her body rigid with tension, as our rocking hips ground and retreated in shorter, firmer motions. I fisted the blanket tighter, my hands fucking trembling as I ground my teeth and fought to stave off my extremely imminent orgasm. She grew wetter with every second, and I was growing desperate to bury myself deep inside her, grab her hips, and just fucking explode already. Her body began quaking, but I couldn't be certain if it was from pleasure or exertion. With a breathless groan, I pushed myself higher, and stared into her eyes, locking my jaw as I relented to my urge and gripped the blanket tightly, thrusting hard into her with a grunt. Our fucking skin clapped. Then her eyes grew wide, and her hands came to my ass, grasping two handfuls of flesh, and pushing me onto her as she threw her head back, arcing her body into a delicate bow, and pressing her tits against my chest. I watched her eyes close tightly as she shuddered and writhed against me, all fucking flushed, and holding her breath as she tightened around my dick. Her mouth opened with a silent cry, and I knew she was coming. So I dropped my lips to her neck and gave her two final, skin-clapping thrusts before I was unable to hold it any longer. I shoved my mouth into her neck and grunted into her skin, burying myself deep inside of her. My growl, muffled by her wet skin, as my tongue pressed against it, reverberated through my chest until I lifted my lips and it was nothing but a whimpered, "Shit, Bella. Fuck." The blankets bunched in my hands as I pulled my fists toward her head, jerking and twitching inside of her. I shuddered, and pushed, and fisted the fabric so tightly that I felt my nails through it. I could feel her fingers in my hair, her legs and arms limp as I ground against her one final time. Then I collapsed, panting, as she stroked my hair, and heaved beneath me. The cool air was a little fucking welcome now, and it chilled the light sheen of sweat covering my neck as I turned my head, and kissed her throat, seeking her lips with mine. Our kiss was brief, and I retreated, slipping from her only to rest my forehead on her stomach, before looking into her eyes. They were warm and exhausted, and this lazy little half-smirk spread across her face. I smiled back, and turned my face, staring at the swaying trees, and just tired in good ways. In one